Good morning. Hello. Hi, Byron. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Hi, welcome. Welcome to our morning meeting. We are here with Byron, the beautiful barred owl ambassador. Say hi. Hi. Byron is just one of two of the barred owls that we have here at the Center for Wildlife, and he's very, very sweet. Hi, honey. Yeah. Good morning. We'll wait for you guys to come in to get chatting about him. Hello, good morning. When you come in, let us know that you're here and we can give you a shout out. Let us know where you're from. We love hearing about all the different areas that people are located in, so it's really cool. Good morning, Katie. Hello, welcome. Hi. Who's that? I know we're talking about you. Good morning. So Byron, hello, good morning everybody. Byron is our barred owl ambassador. He's been with us for quite some time, probably around 14 years at this point. And he's very, very sweet. Good morning, Teresa. Hello. He's very sweet. He came to us after he was hit by a car. And that is a story that you've probably heard many times from us. A lot of our ambassadors have come to us that way. And it's just, a fact of what we deal with here at the center. We get a lot of hit by car birds. So he was hit by a car, and you can see this wing here is drooping quite a bit, so it's coming away from his body. Most of the time when we see a bird sitting perched up, hello Priscilla and Winthrop, hello, good morning. Most of the time when we see a bird all perched up, their wings are tucked in all nicely like this. So you can see on this side, Byron has these beautiful feathers down here. His wrist is right here, so his wrist is actually up here, and then his elbow is under back here, and then his shoulder is in his body. And so usually when we see birds perched up like that, it's like they're sitting like this, and then the feathers come off of that wrist joint. Good morning, Jessica. Hello. So on this side, you can see his elbow back here is kind of holding his wing out a little bit. So he has an injury in his elbow joint, and that caused that joint to freeze, kind of. It forms this big knot of scar tissue and bone called a callus. Good morning, John Paul. Good morning, Kristen. Good morning, Taya. Hello. I had an aunt named Taya. That's so sweet. Yeah, it was short for Dorothea because she was Dutch, but that's awesome. Good morning, Taya. Hello. So when his wing is all up like this, his wrist kind of pokes out a little bit because it's being held out by his elbow. So his elbow is where he has the injury. And that means he's no longer really able to extend his wing fully, so he's not able to sustain flight. He's not able to get back up into the air, so he'll usually like fall to the ground and then have a hard time getting back up into the air. So we provide him with sticks and branches and things that he can hop around onto to get himself back up into the air in his enclosure. You want to look at the camera? I know, I know, I know. Yeah, I know I moved my hand. Yeah, it's okay. So Byron is our male, our male barred owl. And we do have a female as well named Fern. What's interesting is that Fern is much bigger than Byron. Byron is about, I know. Can you step up, honey? You're a good boy. Byron is a pretty big bird, but he's only about maybe 500, 600 grams. He does not weigh that much. Oh, thank you, Alan. That is so sweet. Alan has donated to the stream. That's so sweet. Alan, we really appreciate your gifts, and we, for everybody who watches this, we really appreciate all that you guys do to make this possible. And there is always a donation button on these videos, on our webpage, on our Facebook page, so we really greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much, Alan. Yeah, so Byron is only about like maybe half a pound or a pound, and I know, right, Kitty? And Fern, his roommate, is probably about twice as big as he is, so maybe 2 pounds. And they don't look like they would be so light, but because they're birds, they do they do weigh quite a bit less than a mammal would this size. So his bones are hollow. Most of the bones in his body, the long bones, like the bones in his wings and his legs, are hollow. And that means they're incredibly fragile and brittle, but it also keeps them light enough to get up into the air to fly. So that's good for them. And their feathers are also very light. They don't carry a lot of mass. So you've heard that light as a feather. Feathers are very light, and that helps them to stay light enough to fly. So when they're flying, they're lifting their body mass up into the air. They don't have to use as much energy. And in raptors, what's pretty cool is that the males tend to be smaller than the females. So the females in raptors, in birds of prey like Byron, like our owls and our hawks and our falcons, they usually have females that are big. They usually have a lot of muscle on them. They have more mass because they are sitting in the nest and defending babies and want to be big and tough and scary. And the males are usually the ones that are smaller. And this isn't necessarily because they are weaker. It's just because they are the ones that are doing most of the hunting and most of the flying. So they really need to be light enough to fly, to get up into the air. And they all need to be able to do that for a long period of time. And they also need to be able to hunt animals that are very fast. So they need to be quick and agile. So being heavy usually is not an advantage for those males. And so many species of raptors, like barred owls, will have females that are big and males that are small. So in barred owls, it's noticeable, like you can definitely tell between Byron and Fern that Fern is bigger by looking at them. But some of them, it's really just a matter of a little bit of muscle mass, and it's hard to tell. In others, it's really drastic. So in peregrine falcons, for example, the females can be maybe up to like 1.5 times bigger than the male. So the male might be like 2/3 the size of the female, which is pretty cool. Good morning, Ricky in Texas. Good morning. Hello. So it's kind of the reverse of what we expect to see in a lot of mammal species and a lot of humans. You know, that's kind of the reverse of what we are expecting to see, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about the way that they divide up labor in the nest and divide up the way that they take care of their babies. So it's interesting. It's very interesting. And the other thing is that their competition amongst each other is usually less. So males will do a lot of courting of females. So the male barred owls will build nests or, find nest cavities and call from those areas. And then they'll hunt mice for the female and show her that he can hunt mice. But they don't usually do so much fighting with each other. There's not so much like competition going on directly between males. And that means that you usually won't see males getting big and tough because they're not fighting each other all the time. That's usually a result. So it's very interesting. These guys have kind of the reverse of what we're used to seeing, but it makes a lot of sense. So Byron is our sweet little boy. He is, like I said, we've had him for about 14 years, so he is probably around 15 years old. He came to us as an adult, so we do expect that he is about 15. And in the wild, these guys might live into their teens and maybe up to 20. Hi. And they are usually able to live beyond that in captivity, so into their 20s and up to as much as 30. And so Byron's first mate, Bianca, lived with us until she was 23, which is fantastic. Good morning, Kyle and Camden and Dover. Hello, good morning, everyone. Please let me know if you have any questions. We're having a great time out here in the shade, so please let us know if you have any questions, and I will be happy to answer them all. And Byron here is very content as well. I know he's staring at me. That's just because I'm talking and I'm closest, but I will try to get him to look at the camera a little bit. I know. Something cool that you can see though from this vantage point is his facial disc. Our owls are obviously nocturnal. Not obviously. There are some owls that are not nocturnal, which is interesting. But many owls are nocturnal, and this is what they have evolved to be, is nocturnal. So many of their adaptations and the features on their bodies have to do with getting around at night and hunting successfully in the dark. So they have incredible low light vision, the cells in our eyes that detect things in low light or see well in low light. They have a ton of them. I think it's the cones that do that. And so they have just jam-packed eyes with those cells. Their eyes are an entirely different shape than ours. So we have eyeballs, we have empty sockets that our eyes sit in, and those eyes are ball-shaped. That's why we call them that. So they roll around in our skulls. We can roll them all over, and they can, and we can see our peripheral vision pretty well. We get a good range of vision around us because we're able to roll our eyes around in our skulls. Owls are not able to do that. Owls actually have fixed eyes. Their eyes are locked in place. They have this tube of bone that goes around their eye that allows them that makes their eyes kind of like a tube shape. So if you're looking through binoculars, you'll kind of understand how an owl sees. And that means that they're not able to roll their eyes around in their skulls, but it does give them very, very good night vision. So that tube of bone is to kind of hold this giant eye in place and support it, because their eyes are actually much bigger than ours. But it means that they sacrifice something in, range of vision. So they have to be able to turn their heads around to see the same amount that we can. So this is why our owls can turn their heads around and see all the way around them. They can turn their heads about 270 degrees around in a full circle, which is very far. Good morning, Christina. Hello. He is so beautiful, isn't he? The other thing that owls have right around their eyes is this beautiful circle of feathers that you can see, and it's one of the more drastic characteristics on a barred owl. So when people describe barred owls to me, they usually say it had a big round face, and this is very normal. So they have this big facial disc around their eye. And they have like two of them. Some owls have one big facial disc around their whole face, like our great gray owls. Some owls have like a U-shaped face, like a barn owl, and it's all those feathers creating that shape. So in our barred owls, they have these two facial discs around their eyes. And what they're actually doing is acting like satellite dishes. So these guys are able to use those feathers to tune in to sounds that they're hearing when they're out there in the woods at night. And their ears are actually located right next to their eyes. So I'm going to see if Byron will let me show you guys his ears this morning. He seems pretty settled and calm. Sometimes he'll let me do this. So his ears, I know. He's like, why? His ears right there. Oh, it's pretty dark. Sorry, guys. But his ear is right here next to his eye. You can see that flap. And it's very large. It is just like our ear in its shape. It has a shell shape to it. And it just has this flap that covers it to keep things from getting out. But the feathers around his eye actually tune into sounds and direct sound into that ear that's located right behind his eye. And you can actually see, if you look in his ear, you can see the side of that tube that makes up his eye. So you can see the bone around his eye when you look into his ear, because it's all right there. So they're very, very large ears, and they help them to hunt extremely well, even when there's very, very low light conditions. So we always talk about owls being able to see in the dark, and they can see very well in low light, but they can't really see that well in the dark. There are some theories about them being able to see into the UV spectrum, so being able to see things that would glow under a black light, but that hasn't really been proven for sure. But what we do know is that their hearing is so good that they almost don't need to be able to see exactly what they're looking for. And what they'll do is they'll sit in a tree, in a perch, and listen for mice scurrying around on the floor below them, and they'll point their facial disc down towards that animal. They will tune those feathers in, so they'll do tiny little micro adjustments of those feathers, tune into exactly where that mouse is, and pounce on it. Hi, everybody. Hello, Kara. Hello, Kyle. Hello, Christina. And what's cool about this is they've done studies on owls where they'll put them in a completely darkened room. There's no source of visible light. So unless they're seeing things that glow in the dark, there's no way for them to see. And they release a little mouse in there. They put obstacles in there. And the owls are able to catch those mice with incredible accuracy because they're able to hear so well where that little mouse is. So it's really incredible the amount that they're able to do. I did mention that there are some owls that are diurnal. So we are diurnal. Diurnal means that we're awake during the day and we're asleep at night. And there are some owls that are diurnal. So what they think happened is owls evolved and became nocturnal, and then they started spreading out and adapting to their environments, and the ones that needed to be diurnal kind of reverted back to being diurnal, but they still maintained some of the structures that evolved in our owls. So for example, snowy owls are owls that live in an area of the world where for months the sun doesn't set. So they have to be able to get around in all sorts of light conditions. So they have to be able to hunt when it's bright all summer long up there. Some of them do migrate down here, but some do stay all winter long up there. So they have to be able to get around when it's completely dark all the time for months and months and months. So snowy owls are not strictly nocturnal. They are more diurnal. They're more active during the day. There are also owls that live out in the desert that are diurnal, that are more active during the day because it gets so cold at night. It just doesn't make sense for them to be hunting. So it's really fascinating how these guys have evolved and adapted to their surroundings. So they're incredible animals. Good morning, Naomi. Hello. If anyone has any questions about anything I've been talking about, I am happy to answer those. I know Kara has a question about doing a meeting in his enclosure, and we can absolutely do that. It's just really dark in there, so it's hard to do a good quality video in there. It gets really dark because of the, I mean, there is a skylight, so at certain times of the day, it is pretty bright in there, but they are in one of the darker enclosures because they're owls. And so, yeah, I think this time of day it's just super dark in there. So we have done some enclosure videos before, and depending on which enclosure it is, it can be better quality than others, but I can certainly make note that we should do more of the enclosure videos. I think that would be cool. It's just a matter of making them well lit, because we don't have fancy lighting equipment or anything like that. We're using the sun. And these guys also are usually easier to see close up, and in their enclosures they might fly off or do something. But we can certainly add it to our list of things that you guys are interested in seeing. And if you go back in our videos, you may be able to see some of them. I know Brewster Kristen is thinking about doing one in Scarlett's enclosure, and we've done a few in Bertram's enclosure, and they do kind of look similar because they're all in the raptor house. So, but they are very sweet, and when they're in their enclosure, these guys too. Byron is a sweetheart when he's on the glove, but when he's in his enclosure, he gets very upset if you go in there. He starts clacking his beak, which is something that owls do to say back off. They clack their beaks. They like make a snapping sound with their beak. And then he will wasn't it? He will puff up and make himself really big. He'll like crouch down and puff all of his feathers up really high to make himself look big. And then once he gets on the glove, he's just a sweetheart. Yeah. I know. And he's like, he'll step right up onto your glove. He's just like not happy about it at first, and then he gets used to it. So he's a little bit more sensitive. Fern is just a rock star. We got Fern 2 years ago, and she is so calm with people. She will sit forever and just, absorb what's going on around her. I think because of the brain damage that she has, and because she's a larger bird, she just doesn't have as much. She's not as nervous or anxious as Byron can be sometimes. Not usually, but he can be. Usually he's just sleepy. I know. Barred owls are incredibly common, so you can see them in lots of different areas, and probably everybody on this meeting right now has barred owls that live in their area. But that doesn't mean they're not like incredible. It's just that they are such good generalists. They can eat almost anything. They can live in very different types of habitats, so they don't need like a super dense forest. They don't need big tracts of land. They can live in a schoolyard or in a city park or in a backyard. They do okay in more developed areas. And so these guys are incredibly common throughout the entire country. So when people say they're hearing an owl or have a picture of an owl, 9 times out of 10, it's a barred owl. They're also not too afraid of people, and they tend to be pretty loud and chatty. So this is one of those owls that you would be more likely to see in the wild. Donna has a question about, has the drought impacted the local owls or had an impact on the types of issues you see in incoming patients? That's a really good question. I think during times of drought, we see more human-wildlife interactions happening because animals get a little bit more desperate. And so you see, for example, we get a lot of calls about different types of animals chewing into pipes or chewing into different sources of water. So we get more of those like human-animal interaction sorts of calls. We do see other sorts of calls that we will get are more animals going into gardens or flower beds, things like that. Basically coming in closer contact with humans. And so we get more of those phone calls, and we always advise like humane ways of dealing with those, of coexisting. So those are something that we do see more on our call. And then we sometimes we'll see animals that are like having a hard time. We got a lot of like broadwing hawks this summer that were juveniles that were having a hard time being on their own for the first time. So we do see some of those, although that is somewhat normal. In the summer, we just might see more of it during drought conditions. And then the interesting thing that happens after drought conditions is, and I know this because I was up at camp for the week that it happened, but what happens is during times of drought, the water table gets lower, the soil dries out, and it's actually able to hold less water. So that leads to flooding conditions once it starts to rain again, and that can cause all sorts of runoff issues. So I was up on a lake in New Hampshire, and when I was there, there was an algal bloom in the lake, and that was the result of all of that runoff from the recent rains just draining quickly through this dry soil that wasn't able to hold on to moisture because of the drought. And that algal bloom can create toxins that can impact wildlife. So it's just very interesting, and it gets to how connected everything is. And we, of course, couldn't swim in the lake, which was a bummer. But for the wildlife that have to swim in the lake, it's really interesting. So so you hear a lot about these algal blooms or red tide or anything like that. Those certainly do have impacts on wildlife and are exacerbated by drought conditions. So, so I can imagine we've had definitely some animals that either here or at other centers that have been impacted by things like that. That's a really good question. The drought conditions here also can impact Mount A. We are a watershed, so the water that comes to Mount A, that gets rained on Mount A, will get collected into our town's reservoir, which of course was lower during that drought. And then our vernal pools that are a great sort of reservoir for water as well were dried up. So there is less water just in the water table on the watershed here. And that can lead to like I mentioned, those wildlife-human interactions where water is a crucial resource and wild animals are going to go where they need to go to get it. So we get a lot of calls about like animals chewing into pipes and things like that. That's a really interesting question though. And for the most part, we're hoping that, you know, the drought is kind of worked itself out. We did get some good rain for a while there. Hi, you're a good boy. If anyone has any other questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them, and I love chatting about all of these things because it's interesting to me. It's what we do, and the impacts that these things have on our local wild animals are sometimes unpredictable, and the way that they're connected can sometimes be really complex. It'll be interesting to see the impact on amphibians that the drought has, if there were perhaps fewer amphibians, you know, this summer. So maybe fewer barred owls eating amphibians and fewer young barred owls making it through the summer, you know, being on their own, making it to fall. So we'll have to see, but it's very interesting. The impacts usually we will see kind of after the fact, after they happen. We'll start getting admissions of patients. For example, the big squirrel boom that we had a few years ago was a result of a big acorn year, and we saw that winter a ton of extra more owls. So Kara, we don't file their talons down unless they're like really sharp and they like start scratching themselves. We don't usually do that. They have branches and like rope, sisal rope in their enclosure that they perch on. That kind of does that for them, and it keeps their talons in healthy shape. So if you look at Byron's talons, they are still pretty sharp. I know, I moved. They are still pretty sharp, and that's why we wear the gloves. Thank you so much, Kara, for donating. That is so, so sweet. You're so sweet. Yeah, so they don't have to be filed down. They usually will do that on their own. And they also still use them to hold on to their food and to eat. So we don't want them to be completely dull. And sometimes if they do get like a little too sharp, if they're not filing them down for some reason, then we will like take a little tiny baby pair of nail trimmers for like the tiniest kitten in the world and just do like the tips, but very rarely do we have to do that. More often we're dealing with beak things. We have to file the beak down because they're not eating as much as they would variety wise. We do try to provide them with variety, but it's nothing compared to what they would be getting in the wild. Good morning, Sue. Hello in Savannah. Wow, that's awesome. So we do deal with beak and talon things, and it's a part of their husbandry is making sure that those are healthy. On Perry the I was going to say platypus, Perry the peregrine falcon, we do have to trim his nails. His disability in his foot from like the neurological damage he has. His feet will sometimes like cross over each other, and if his talons get too sharp, he'll start scratching himself. And so we do trim his nails because we don't want him poking himself. But most of them are coordinated enough with their feet that they don't do that. So, and they do file them down themselves. So like his talons are not very sharp right now. He's done a pretty good job of filing them down. But the other thing is that because they're so big and so strong, they don't have to be super, super sharp. Usually the sharpest talons are on the tiny, tiny little guys. So, yeah. And that's why we wear the big leather gloves. Yeah. You're a good boy. Thank you guys so much for watching. Any other questions, I'm happy to answer, but we were going to get Bertram fed because he's very angry at us right now, as always, for not feeding him first. But we are certainly happy to answer any last minute questions. And if you guys you know, have any other comments or anything, we're happy to stay here with you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. And Kristen's going to be back tomorrow. That's funny, Katie. Katie says she trimmed her talons yesterday after seeing them at yoga class. That's funny. Yeah, I know. Sometimes you're just like, oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Teresa. Thank you. We will, yeah, Kristen will be back tomorrow with, I believe, one of our turtle ambassadors. And then we are going to be, I'm going to be out for a couple days. And then we have our big open house on Sunday, so we're going to have some fun. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Thanks, John. Thank you. We will see you all later. Have a great rest of your week.